In life, every step can have unpredictable consequences. I found myself in the vortex of my wife's fatal betrayal, and what followed changed our fate forever. My eyes saw what could not have been expected. The wife whom I had considered my support and faith had stepped into the path of treason. My heart was torn apart, and my mind was trapped in a prisoner of revenge. In this video, I will tell you an amazing story where infidelity is intertwined with the drama of fate, and the imminent consequences keep us in terrible suspense. Are you ready to dive into this world where love and betrayal fight for our attention? Prepare to be immersed in a story where every choice has a price and every step leads to the unknown. Welcome to the amazing stories of wife cheating, where mysteries unravel and life shows its unpredictability. Get comfortable and we'll get started. Irina, 38 years old. Once a month, I meet with girlfriends who have stayed with me since high school, listening to the girls in a gaggle about their novels, smiling and silent, like that English lord who did not utter a word until he was 16, until the oatmeal burns. What do I tell them about the parent-teacher meeting, the housekeeper, the circulation, the cream, lemur, and hyaluronic acid? To follow myself my job. I do it by inertia. And why do I spend so much effort on it? Why do I put up with waxing appeal and anti-cellulite massage? I'm sure that if one day I stop wearing lipstick, the last person to notice it will be my husband. At the same time, I understand that drastically change their lives, divorce, and start from scratch is stupid. To feel like a woman again, I would be enough a trifle romance, but with whom? For reputation, as well as for money, the law of accumulation is true. Reaching a critical mass, both begin to work for themselves. The few men I have known over the years of my happy marriage have developed an immunity to me, it must be admitted mutually. Intrigue with a colleague, girlfriend's husband, or former classmate has something defeatist, and the well-known risk of rumors, gossip. I myself am surprised at how I cold-bloodedly pored over scenarios, developed a strategy, waited for a business trip to Europe, put a suitcase in addition to a pair of casual business suits, translucent lingerie, Louboutins on stilettos, and vial of Marastin. In preparation, cheating turned from an adventure to a work project for me. It's hardly the feeling I was looking for. But without it, I probably never would have completed the project. At breakfast at the hotel, my attention was caught by a stout-looking gentleman who looked like a businessman from somewhere in Asia. He differed favorably from the fat Germans and Englishmen actively eating in the restaurant, but he did not notice me and smiled only at the contents of his plate. By evening, I had finished all my business and the next day was free. I could have slept in bed until dinner or gone to the pool, but my sixth sense drove me to the restaurant. This time my appearance and character just out of bed was noticed. Buddha, tearing himself away from the eggs, studied my profile for a long time, and then, catching up with me in the fair, offered to show me the city. We had a wonderful day. He pretended to be a tour guide. I pretended not to notice that he was quoting a guidebook. The fact that he never once asked me about my husband and children redeemed the snarkiness of his compliments. In the parallel world where we found ourselves, I was young, beautiful, desirable, and completely free. In the evening, we had dinner at the hotel and went up to my place. At home, while I was still contemplating my treacherous plan, I was terribly anxious about the details. Under what pretext could I lure him to my room? How, without ruining the romance, would I slip him a condom, whether or not to turn out the lights? And most importantly, how would I survive the morning when I woke up next to a stranger? But apparently the stranger had experience in these matters. Everything happened simply and naturally. In the dark, with no silly tenderness, I woke up alone in the morning. At breakfast, we parted ways. No notes at the front desk, no flowers, no phone calls, no business cards with a phone number. Buddha tactfully disappeared, giving me not only a beautiful night, but also the feeling that everything that had happened was an erotic dream, and that nothing had really happened. The remorse I had anticipated was gone too, nor was there much desire to return to longhouses and families. It's like after sex, some people want warm caresses and others want to be alone. 3.5 hours later, when the plane landed at Sheremetyevo, that mood remained. I was met by my husband. We were always teasing each other, the stiffer the better. And this time he asked me how it was going. I hope you got a lover. I chose the tried and true method. The best way to defend yourself is to attack. Yes, a lover. Young, handsome, rich. No, an interesting middle-aged Asian man. Good in bed. Not bad, B+. Well, I'm late for the handout. Are you kidding me? I should have said I was serious, which I was tempted to do. Caution prevailed, I said. What do you think? And hid in my husband's armpit, so that, God forbid, not to meet his eyes. He did seem to wonder for a few seconds if I could cheat on him, the world's best husband, lover, and father. Wondered, maybe for the first time in his life, and decided there was no way that could happen. But this thought has long since made him feel better. Then he offered with an innocent face to have dinner in a Chinese or Japanese restaurant to my liking. Then he tried very ineptly to eavesdrop on my phone conversations or looked over my shoulder when I was chatting on Facebook. I, in turn, watched with interest as my husband read a detective novel, put on a sandwich, chatted on the phone, and asked about himself. What if there weren't all these years together? If I saw this man for the first time, would I like him? And I realized that yes, I would. I remember I even started to get jealous of him, as if he was the one who cheated on me, not me with him. It's been a year since then. I don't regret anything, but I know that I won't have such adventures in my life again. Angela, 28, I treated my future husband like a demigod. I had just gotten into Avgig, and he was already a filmmaker with a name. When he talked about Tarkovsky, Eisenstein, Fonterre, I listened with my mouth open. I absorbed every word like a sponge, but it was not enough for a happy married life. In the very first months of our marriage, it turned out that cinema was the only thing we had in common. We didn't get along on anything else, not at home, not in bed. I really wanted a child. My husband's rare insights were exclusively oral. Unfortunately, there are no children from this. Along with this desire, disappeared my appetite. I lost 10 kilos and almost did not get out of the set. In summer after the second course, I went for practice to the Crimea. I shot a drama about how difficult life is for a misunderstood woman. And what else could I think about? I didn't have enough money to hire a full-fledged film crew. I had 3 young actors at my disposal, my friends, plus a cameraman, and a guy who, with his complete lack of education and relevant skills, was an editor, a lighting technician, a costumer, and sometimes a supporting actor. The guy was pure gold. Did not swear, did not drink, did not smoke, followed me like a dog, followed all orders, and in the evenings after a hard day's work accompanied me to the hotel. His silhouette, which would do honor to a fitness instructor, loomed under the windows until I turned off the lights. At first it amused me, then it began to annoy me, and then we had crazy sex. The affair lasted until the end of filming and, of course, was kept strictly secret. For me, a girl from a good family with almost 2 degrees, it was a shame. It wasn't even the fact that I had cheated on my husband that embarrassed me, but with whom I had cheated. He was uneducated, not my type at all. He was practically a plumber from an adult film. No talk about the beautiful things I was so used to at home. But I couldn't help myself, put up with my business, who liked simple, tanned guys with beefy muscles. Plus the boy was well-mannered and somehow not in a good way spoiled. He, for instance, never used language in front of a woman, unlike my intellectual husband. With him, I felt fragile and helpless, a real woman. With my return home, the connection was severed. I honestly tried to rebuild a relationship with my husband, but nothing worked. The same rare sex and everything in a circle. This went on for another 5 years. By the end of the institute, I got tired of defending myself. Now, I do not remember what triggered the scandal, but returning from another creative vacation, I laid out for my husband all that I think about him, about his movies, and about our marriage. It was just as far-fetched and fruitless. He was most shocked by the stories about my adventures. Here I heard so many new and interesting things about myself, including the names of women who behaved this way, and how he had loved me madly all these years, and how he wanted a child. Of course, he blamed me for the lack of an heir. A month later, we were divorced. Almost simultaneously with the divorce, I got my degree in filmmaking and went to Romania to film. There I met my current husband, a ski instructor, and gave birth to his son. We are happy, but I still remember the stuffy Crimean summer of a burnt-out editor, because it was thanks to that story I realized what kind of man I really need. Anna, 36. It always seemed to me that a girl like me, such a wonderful and intelligent husband, cannot cheat, never. Even if I do not have sex with him for 3 months, work like crazy, and at home I only have time to cook dinner, have a few words with him and fall asleep, putting a 1-year-old child to bed. You won't believe it, but I really don't remember how I found out about this. They say our psyche has a way of erasing the most unpleasant things from our memories. So I forgot exactly how it turned out that Sasha was sleeping with someone else. I remember that I had irrefutable proof. I remember that he didn't even try to refute them. I was hysterical. He swore he loved only me. Anyway, after a couple of weeks, my passions subsided, and Sasha left on a business trip for a month. I sent the child with a babysitter at the cottage and wondered what to do with the unexpectedly dumped on me freedom. The answer was not long in coming. One morning I, still sleepy, parked my car in some alleyway and shaved a coffee pot. In the crosswalk, someone called out to me. I looked up and couldn't believe my eyes. Igor was standing in front of me. At the institute we had sort of an affair, short-lived and without much passion on either side. But after we parted, I began to romanticize his image and eventually convinced myself that it was the great love of my life, which by a ridiculous accident was cut short. And the ridiculous accident was that he drunkenly pinched my heel on a visit. I called him a jerk in front of everyone. He said that I myself am a fool. And that was it. Igor stood there, looking me straight in the eye. It's been a long time, hasn't it? Yes, it has. Where are you going? To work? Me too. You're late? Me too. We exchanged phone numbers and emails and went to work. I received the first text exactly as I crossed the threshold of my office, and 5 minutes later I received an email from Igor. He started playing with words, building bridges from our shared past to the present, remembering some songs, words, passwords, and passwords. Somewhere around lunchtime, I realized that if we met, we would definitely end up in bed sooner rather than later. With the rest of my mind, I began to weigh the pros and cons. This perspective and came to a conclusion. Sasha had cheated on me first, and thus opened the account. I was ready to even it out. A friendly draw would have suited me fine. Why would I want that? I didn't want to take revenge on him. Rather, I wanted to test myself and try it out. Then to transfer my feelings to my husband. Why had he cheated on me? What could a story on the side provide? Self-affirmation, attention, adrenaline, emotions that had time to dull after 8 years in the local life. I met up with Igor that same evening and went for a walk downtown. Looping through the alleys, we were digging into memories, laughing endlessly and feeling like teenagers. An hour or two later, we drove to his place, listening to music and finding more and more in common. Closer to 2 in the morning, I asked for a shower to freshen up before heading home. Funny tricks, I remember doing the same thing at the institute. The result, of course, was that we ended up in bed. And this much anticipated and much desired event was the point of no return. Before this whole mess with diapers and undies began, I thought my husband Sasha was a great lover. It's not that I changed my mind after the birth. I just forgot about it. Pardon the pun, but you see the big one from a distance. To make a long story short, this whole love sprint ended in total disappointment. Trying not to look Igor in the eye, I left for work in the morning. He texted and emailed me again that day, but I didn't answer him as willingly. However, I decided to meet him again. Of course, I didn't share my problems with my husband. We discussed my friend's work and travel. With every minute, I realized that I was far from Igor. From his way of life, endless no luck, no interesting acquaintances. Citing fatigue, I drove home, and then let the whole story slide. When Sasha returned, he was surprised at the change that had taken place in me. I was glad to see him, and for the first time in a long time, I made passionate love to him. I don't think he understood anything, but it made sense to me why people cheat in the first place. They're still what they lack in their family. My husband lacked intimacy. I lacked ease. We have forgotten how to appreciate each other. After those 2 cheating crises, our relationship got better. Much better. Yulia, 34 years old, please fasten your seatbelts as we are about to land in 20 minutes at Amsterdam Airport. So, my freedom has exactly 20 minutes to live. My husband and oldest son will meet me at the airport. Maybe my Dutch mother-in-law will come too. I would be a mother again, with a crinkle between my eyebrows, a fast speech, a bossy tone in her voice, and a practical Dutch way of dressing. Minimal makeup, no heels, everything is simple and comfortable. There is no trace of that femme fatale. My second life began 2 years ago. Having come to my senses after the birth of my second son, I went alone to Moscow to visit my parents. I remembered that my husband and I had not made love for probably 5 months, when Anton with force almost roughly pressed me to him. It was at a nightclub. I hadn't been to a nightclub in ages. We'd had met about half an hour before, and in another half an hour, we were on our way to his place. That night was magical, 10 times magical. At our first meeting with Anton, I did not know if I needed all this, and I did not leave him any passwords. But he quickly found me through classmates. 3 months later, I came to Moscow for a few days and we met again. I liked Anton's pressure. I was used to it. Gallons are very different. My husband, for example, has always been terribly indecisive. I remember when we first met and it was getting close, I had to take the initiative. He kept fidgeting, afraid to violate my personal space, talking all sorts of feminist nonsense. He turned out to be a good husband, hardworking, patient, and reliable as a rock. However, after the birth of our first child, all our conversations boiled down to 3 topics: children, money, and home. Since the crisis happened, we both worked hard. Apparently, my husband thought that if he provides 60% of the family budget and spends 3 nights a week with the kids, the marital duty is over and there is no need to make love to me. We are both so tired, and tomorrow we have to get up so early. I have been to Moscow 4 times in the last 2 years. All those times we saw Anton. My relationship with my husband benefited from this story, the best family psychotherapy. I began to like myself. I began to like my life. It was as if I was myself again, back in spontaneity and freshness. It was the kind of woman my husband had fallen in love with 6 years earlier. When I returned to Holland after that first nightclub shakedown, I stopped complaining, snapping, yelling at night, feeling guilty, or more clarity in my priorities. My husband and I even started making love, not as often as I would have liked, but still. And the existence of Anton in my life, not a single living soul knows. I myself sometimes think of him as a phantom, as a character in a soap opera in which I occasionally manage to star. I honestly do not know if we will ever see each other again, but that is what I like most about our story. You know, I remember a married friend of mine who used to have affairs on the side, so to speak, and when I asked him if he would allow his wife, a very attractive girl by the way, to cheat on him, he answered, "Yes, in principle I would." The main thing is that I never find out about it. Otherwise, it's over, basta. But in my opinion, his words accurately articulate a certain male position regarding marital infidelity of wives and companions. As soon as it becomes something public, I do not know, marriage ceases to exist as if. Surely, there are examples of exceptions where men have been able to pretend it didn't happen. It didn't happen. But then again, most of the time it's not forgiven. But on the other hand, I'll take the argument, and I think you'll agree with me. If so, put a plus sign. If not, then a minus sign in the comments. I wonder how many like-minded people are like that. There is a certain tradition established in today's culture that allows for adultery on the part of men. For some reason. Of course, you will say that we are mostly talking about one-time contacts, like girls of easy virtue, dating without continuing the relationship and so on. But such exploits are by no means, under any circumstances, disclosed and categorically denied, and denied even if the man, so to speak, is caught red-handed. And the most interesting thing is that wives admit that their husbands can theoretically spend time with someone there, have contact, and there is nothing dramatic about it. They are even willing to turn a blind eye to it if they happen to find out about something. But does this mean that men are big possessors? I think not. I think not. The feeling of ownership towards their partners is developed in both sides. It is equally developed in us. It is just more of a skew in a male-dominated culture. And accordingly, these stereotypes of behavior are absorbed by the boys at an early age, once they start competing with other males and women. I think from childhood, they are more family-oriented, ready for more compromises and less fixated on their principles than men are. They say that a wedding ring on a man's finger signals a woman, "Watch out, I'm married," but the same ring on a woman turns out to be a call, "Boulder, I'm married." Have you noticed this? Please write in the comments, here it was or not, have you noticed? Perhaps, of course, a relationship with a married woman is indeed safer for the man, because he is not seen as a potential husband. And thus, from such a relationship, you can only get pleasure without the headache. Right, but this is only for the unmarried man. If a connection is established between a woman and a man who are married, I'm sure of that, by the way, then trouble is sure to come to both of them. Don't you agree? I hardly believe in relations between sexes exclusively for the sake of this intimacy, for the sake of physical closeness, because sooner or later feelings will wake up. Well, 100% you have faced this in your life, or in the life of friends. Well, 200 million%. And then feelings will wake up, affection and adultery will appear. It will certainly open, and all the finite la comedy. And I assure you, love of a married man to another woman eventually turns out to be a real disaster.